Bermuda's green. Bermuda? Bermuda's green. Vanguard? Vanguard, green. Vanguard's green. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement, which in many ways may hold the key to our future on Earth.
Hello, I'm Mike Royer. Many of us who live in Alabama may not realize the significant role that the Marshall Space Flight Center has had in our country's exploration of space. The rockets that carried Alan Shepard and John Glenn into space were developed here. The rovers our astronauts drove on the surface of the moon were built here. And the huge solid rocket boosters that carried the shuttle program into space were developed here as well. Well, now the new director of the Marshall Space Flight Center is a University of Alabama graduate, Jody Singer. We hope you'll enjoy our conversation with her. It's a pleasure today to talk to Director Jody Singer. She is the new director of the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. She is the first woman director here in Huntsville. Director Singer, it's good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be here today.
I suppose we're too many years or decades away from not saying first woman or first minority or first black. It'll just be, here's the new director. But it is a big deal to be the first woman director in a job first held by Dr. Werner von Braun. That has to be something that you've thought about in your career as you came up to this point.
Yes, it's one of those things that, you know, a dream that you say, I believe I can do that.
Yeah. And
it's the folks along the way that help guide you and give you the direction. I like to say it's my perseverance and resiliency that made a difference, but I really know it's the people in my life that made a difference, from, you know, University of Alabama to the folks that I work with today at Marshall Space Flight Center, NASA. The people make the difference. I've had a lot of mentors and folks that really invested in me, so it just goes back to the people, and it's a real honor to be able to lead such a wonderful team with such a wonderful mission that we have at NASA. And I'm looking so forward to the future.
You grew up in Hartselle, Alabama. Our Alabama viewers will be pleased to hear that. Are you thankful for where you were raised and how you were raised?
I am. I'm absolutely so proud of my heritage. Being able to grow up in such a fantastic town as Hartselle, Alabama, where education was a prime thing. Also sports was a very prime thing. But that involvement in the community and that family feeling, and there were a lot of folks in my life that even in school helped support me and make a difference. It was like you had a whole team rooting for you to be successful, and it was really a team sport even then, where you work together to strive to win and to go forward. And so it makes a difference, knowing you've always got a team to support you.
One of the several things you mentioned was education and the educational system that you were blessed to be in. I'm trying to picture this career day where sixth grader Jody Singer said, you know, I think I'd like to be the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center someday. Where did the path to this job begin? Was it interest in science? What was the genesis of that?
I would definitely say growing up I had great math teachers and science teachers that made learning fun. The teachers took interest in the kids, and it makes a difference when you have someone that is motivating you and makes learning fun. It gives you an interest that you might not never pick up on, because it's just something, that inspiration. So learning about math, learning about science, I've always loved to look up into the stars and wonder what was out there. So I think that inspiration and having that foundation made a difference. And so it was just one of those things that I said, I want to do that. So, you know, you never know exactly where you're going to end up, but I know you kind of follow your passion, and it's always the right start.
What led you to the University of Alabama? Why did you choose to come to Tuscaloosa? What went into that decision?
Well, I'll have to admit, my family was always an Alabama fan. I grew up watching Bear Bryant on TV, watching Alabama football. So I will have to admit that the first thing was I was going to Alabama. The second thing was, okay, what am I going to study?
Yeah.
But with that said, I always knew that there was going to be something that I wanted to do close to engineering. At that point in time, I may not have necessarily known exactly what engineering was, but I did go find different folks, talk to them, and find out what they did. And in talking to different mentors and different folks, just shadowing them at work, different things as a high school student, I really learned that I wanted to go into engineering and what it was. And then I learned about the different fields of engineering. And based on that, I chose my what I wanted to study, industrial engineering, and it really has a combination of a lot of the science, the math, and the management activity, and that really appealed to me. So just kind of followed my dream and stuck with it.
It wouldn't be a fair question to ask you to name all your favorite professors, but the department as a whole must, in your memory, mean a lot to you. We're pretty proud of all of our schools at the University of Alabama, but engineering is special, and folks who are in that program seem to really love the guidance that they get there. What are your best memories of that experience in the School of Engineering at Alabama?
Well, I can think of one professor in particular that took a lot of interest in me, Professor Alan Henry. And what he did is he taught me, it was kind of more and more my junior or senior classes. He asked me to be his student aide. And with that, he was teaching, helping me learn to teach and to be able to describe and understand the methodology and what was behind what I was trying to learn, and helping teach that, because a lot of times the best way you can learn something is to teach it. Yeah. And you understand how to communicate. And so I think of the interest that he took in me, and that made a huge difference of me understanding not engineering as the textbooks, but the combination of the textbooks and the people and the skills and what you have to combine together to be successful in life.
I grew up on the space program. I remember when Alan Shepard went into space. You remember many of the history as well, know it better than I, but there's something that wrapped around not just my brain but my heart with the space program. When did it first catch your attention? Just like, wow, look what our country's doing. What mission or what event sticks out in your mind?
Well, I can definitely say I can remember being at my grandmother's house watching TV in July of 1969 when the first landing on the moon. And I can remember thinking, wow, are we really doing this? And how did they get there? And what are they going to find? All of that really inspires me. And so I can still think of that, and I can almost imagine and remember exactly what I was doing and where I was sitting. And probably, I'm sure if I was at my grandmother's house, I had some cookies or something that was helping me concentrate on the TV.
My grandmother said they're doing that in Arizona somewhere. She never bought the whole moon landing. We're going to take a break. We want to talk about a little bit of the history of the program, but then later, going forward, what your hopes and dreams are for space exploration for our country.
Absolutely.
We're speaking to Jody Singer. She's the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center here in Huntsville. We'll continue that conversation in just a moment.
Bermuda, Green, Vanguard, Banana Reef, Houston Network, Net 1.
Welcome back to our interview with Jody Singer, the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center here in Huntsville. Before we took a break, we were talking about your memories of space, the landing in 1969 on the surface of the moon. I got to interview Buzz Aldrin a few years ago. What a smart person, what a genius, and what a character. I imagine you've been around him a good bit. But he tried to explain to me the challenges and dangers of space so calmly. I said, were you a little scared when the fuel lights were flashing in front of your eyes 30 feet above the surface of the moon? He goes, maybe a little anxious. It does take the right stuff to take these rockets into space. You understand that. And I guess it's that magic of a little bit of danger, but the excitement of accomplishment that hooks us all as Americans. I know it hooks you too.
Absolutely.
You're managing about 6,000 employees, a budget that I think flirts with $3 billion.
Yes, sir.
That's a lot of money, and that's a lot of people. Going forward, as we continue exploration in space, many think we're not spending enough and that maybe we had some years where we weren't doing enough to keep Americans into space. Where is your optimistic needle today about our engagement in space, getting more Americans in space, doing it ourselves and not going up with the Russians? Where is your optimism today about what we're going to do in the next decade and decades?
Well, I think it's really critical that from a NASA perspective, we're working to be able to launch Americans from American soil. And I think that's very critical. Our partnerships that we've had with many countries is what will continue. It is what has made us strong, and it will continue. But I will tell you, it is important that America and NASA lead us in going forward in space exploration. It's critical that we are able to launch astronauts to the International Space Station, which is, you think about it, 250 miles out. It's also important, though, that the area that I'm working on, too, is developing the next heavy lift launch vehicle, the Space Launch System, that will take us deeper and faster and further than we've ever gone before. And with that comes some challenges. And that's a lot of what my workforce today is working on, is being able to put us back into deep space and return us to the moon and beyond.
It's a wonderful expanse. The thought of going faster and farther is exciting, but I know you never lose sight of the dangers of it. When you have helped be involved in rocket programs and the one under development now that we'll talk about in a little while, you always know there's dangers there, but you can't eliminate all of that. It's just part of the deal, right?
Space exploration, just like any exploration, is dangerous business, and we know that. So that's why we take every precaution to make sure we safely launch our astronauts and our systems into space, because it's worth it. The outcome is so worth it. So we want to be able to deliver on the taxpayers' dollars, as well as the benefits that we get from space, the technology spin-offs, the things that we do to make life better on Earth, as well as just the accomplishments of being able to go and see things that we've never seen before.
When I was a young broadcaster, I thought, I'm going to get into space someday. The shuttle was just getting going, everything was going great, and when we lost the first shuttle, I thought, I don't think I'm going to make it into space. I thought maybe as a media person it would become routine enough. The sheet they gave me on you says you have 2 grandchildren, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you think those grandchildren might get into space, or their children? When will it become where people who want to help explore, want to be up there with whatever their skills are, teachers, media, scientists, whatever, how far away do you think we are? And I know that's a impossible question to really nail down. You're not going to say, Mike, I think by 2035. What are your hopes and dreams for your children, grandchildren, and theirs?
Well, I definitely think my children, as well as my grandchildren, will have the opportunity to be on the moon and definitely be the Mars generation. I think that is a goal that they are definitely able to achieve within their lifetime, and I think it will be so worth it. It will be hard. We'll have some struggles. We do have to develop a lot of the technology and systems that we need to be able to survive in deep space. We have many today, but we need more so that we're able to deliver on those missions. So I think in their lifetime, they'll be able to see technology advancements. I think they'll see things that we can't even imagine today that will make a difference not only in their lives, but in the lives of people to come.
Well, now you've excited me. I'm thinking I may beat John Glenn's record of being the oldest guy to go into space. I might try to pull that off.
You have to be first at something,
well,
right?
I have your contact information. I may get back to you and see if you'd like to send an old media guy into space.
Absolutely.
As we're going to save a little time for our next segment, because I really want you to explain the propulsion experiments and testing that's going on now. You're already testing the equipment that might send us to Mars. And I want to talk about that as we continue in a moment. We have to go faster, we have to go farther, and that's what your assignment is to help figure out a way to do that. We're visiting with Jody Singer, the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, about the exciting journey our nation is on of continuing exploration of space. We'll be back in a moment.
Bermuda's green. Vanguard. Banana Reef, Houston Network, Net 1. That's 1. small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We continue our conversation now with Jody Singer, the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville. And I told her that I could talk to her all day, and I'm sure you have all day to sit and talk to a media guy about this. But you can tell I'm kind of a space geek and just love everything about it. Growing up with it helped that. One thing I want to make sure we include today, sometimes we think, well, the space program is Cape Kennedy, Cape Canaveral. But it is that, but it's Marshall and Johnson and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California and many other things. And it's not just government and NASA. There's all kinds of helping hands that make this all work, including scientists. Help us understand that umbrella and where Marshall fits into that a bit.
Okay, so NASA has 10 field centers located all over the United States. Marshall happens to be one of them, located in Huntsville, Alabama. Each of the 10 field centers have an area of expertise, or what we call their core capabilities that help support space exploration, science, and technology. Marshall Space Flight Center is responsible for and has a heritage in deep space exploration, which includes the development of large structures, in-space propulsion, ascent propulsion, ability to live and work in space, which includes the environmental life control systems that you have to survive in space. Also a lot of the advanced material and properties that we have to have. So like if you want to build something in space or you want to live off the land, off the moon, having that ability to take that and manufacture with it. So that's a lot of critical things that we do with other centers that we partner, as well as with our industry partners. We do a lot with our industry partners. When you think about all across the United States, Marshall Space Flight Center affects over 48 states. And when you think about the economic benefit, it's over $8 billion. What does that mean? That means jobs, that means education, and hopefully that means inspiration to all the students around the world that would like to be a part of it, to help join and be a part of setting future.
You need those 7th and 8th graders today to get hooked on space as well.
Absolutely.
And come help.
Absolutely. We try so hard to make sure that we not only reach 7th and 8th graders, but we reach them even at kindergarten to make sure they understand that these are the options that they have. We want them to love and enjoy science and want to be a part of it. We call that the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math. We also like to put an A in there that says STEAMed. It also includes the arts, because not only is it critical that we technically can do our job, we've got to be able, just like yourself, to be able to talk it and to tell our story and present it, which is critical because that's part of the inspiration, is telling the story. I
guess because I interviewed him, Buzz Aldrin has kind of become one of my favorite space guys because he loves talking and loves talking about space and his mission and his involvement. He tried to explain to me how to get to Mars and beyond. We're going to have to go obviously farther, but figure out a way to go faster. We can't just allow, we've got to come up with new techniques. He really almost mathematically tried to explain it to a history major. That didn't go well, but in layman's terms, do we do that with larger rockets, which is what you're testing now with SLS? We just have to have more thrust off the ground to go farther. Is it that simple?
Yes. We design the rocket, we design the spacecraft, we design everything based on the mission we're trying to execute. When you think about the International Space Station today that's been up and operational for over 17 years, it's 250 miles out. When we want to go to the moon, we're going 250,000 miles out. Just like today, when you're going someplace, you pick your mode of transportation based on where you're going. Some places you can walk, some places you have to bike, some places you have to have a car. That's a similar kind of discussion. The deeper we want to go into space, we have to have the life support systems, we have to have the propulsion, and we have to have the systems so that humans can survive.
This is a movie science question, kind of, but are scientists, real smart folks, trying to work on ways of propulsion in space, not just the inertia you get from the launch itself, but accelerating in space? Are the smart folks working on that?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that Marshall Space Flight Center, as well as some of the other centers within NASA, are working on. It's not just cheating gravity and getting into space, it is the ability to travel through space, because if we can travel through space faster and cut down on our travel times, that reduces the exposure that our astronauts have to radiation, and it also increases their survival rate. So there's a lot of advanced technology, particularly at Marshall Space Flight Center, that we're working on, including nuclear. So there's a lot of things that we need to do to develop so that we can go faster and further.
President Kennedy challenged us all to go to the moon, and I always liked the last thing he said was, and bring them back safely.
Absolutely.
That's the most important thing. Going forward, for a while the moon was kind of, we did that, we've done that, let's move on. But the moon will play a critical role in future exploration for a variety of reasons. Is it kind of, it's never been out of play, but is it kind of back in the conversation as part of the mission?
Absolutely. The moon has always been where we knew you do everything in stepping stones. So you develop the technology so that you can survive the next step. So the information we get, not only being able to return to the moon, but understanding the systems that we have to be able to land on the moon and return from the moon, as well as what we need, the propulsion, the radiation protection, the things that we're going to have to go further is going to be critical. And also the science that we get. So it's not just exploration, it's science and exploration that we learn together. And when you think about what we're going to have to do as we go further into space, there'll be a lot of robotic and human interaction that will be critical. So understanding our environment and understanding what we have to do to be able to operate, communicate, and work on it is all what we're working on as far as the stepping stones as we go not only to the moon, but to a gateway where we have a gateway that can transport us so that we know where we're going and have a stopping point so you can even go further.
I'd like you to tell us about the status of the SLS, the Space Launch System. We hear about budgets, we hear about deadlines. I know you care about those things, you have to, it's your job as the boss, but you'll give up a deadline any day to make sure it's working right and ready to go, is that right?
Yes, the Space Launch System will have a readiness launch date in 2020. So we're working hard to be able to achieve that date. But with a new vehicle that's going further and faster than we've ever gone before, there are design challenges that we know we will and we are experiencing.
Yeah.
So we're making a lot of progress. We have a majority of the parts already ready and assembled, that they're either at the Kennedy Space Center, they're in New Orleans, the Michoud Assembly Facility, where the core, which is the critical path item, is the fuel tank for the SLS, is being prepared. And we have items like the engines that have already been tested at the Stennis Space Center, and they're ready to go. So we still have a lot of work ahead of us, a lot of challenges, but I know we have the right team in place to make sure we go and get there.
It's in construction. It's never been fired yet, not even a test run. Is that right? It's
the
not
only
to that
thing that
stage
have
yet.
been fired are the engines,
Okay.
but the whole vehicle itself has not been fired. We will do testing along the way of the different components, but the first time that the entire system is fired will be when it launches in 2020.
I'll make this my last question. When I come back to interview you in 5 years, what will you hope your answer will be to my first question? You've been the director now for 5 years. What are you most pleased with? What do you predict and hope your answer might be 5 years from now?
I would say my answer would be we executed on our missions. We have a workforce that's ready to go and a team that's invigorated and able to produce for the future. And we can say we did it with our partners. All of our partners made a difference in us being able to deliver this system not only for us but for our nation. We made a difference.
My all-time favorite mentor at college said everything rises and falls on leadership, and I believe that. And it appears from visiting with you and from all I've read about you that the Marshall Space Flight Center is in good hands. We wish you the best as you lead the important missions here. We know you're busy, and thank you for visiting with us today. We will look forward to asking for another interview with you sometime.
Well, great. I'd love to have you back and come back for any kind of test, and especially the launch.
And we'll mention too that there's places you can't go at Marshall. You can't just walk up and watch them test something, but the facilities that are open to the public, the museum at the Space and Rocket Center, are wonderful, and we hope you can fit that into your schedule sometime. Thanks again, Jody Singer, and thank you for watching.